I think rest, whoever will come, I will just admit them. Until then, we can start the session. Okay. So
Okay.
let's start. Until the previous session, we've already seen the basics of Python. So we had a few prerequisites to do web scraping. First of them was learning Python, right? We've already learned it. We've done a few examples. Then in the last lecture, we got a hang of the web fundamentals and saw how a web page is uh, built and what are the various components of a web page, right? We saw how HTML, CSS, and JavaScript works, right? And we tried a few things. Okay. So the next prerequisite is understanding I mean, you need to know how to inspect the network, right? Basically, what our network calls are made by your browser to the internet and then ultimately to the server, which will present you the final result, which you will scrape, right? So let us understand what all of this means. So before that, I would just like to just show. So for example, this is a page, right? Here, this page, each of these components, whatever we can see here, is generated by HTML, CSS, JavaScript that we had already seen, right? We already saw that, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right? It is written here. So all of that makes it, right? So, but this page was only present when you came to internet, right? So, you know, you could not access it offline, right? Only when you're connected to internet, you could access it. So, what is internet? It's basically a bunch of resources, right? So you can see that we have something here, right? href, referring reference to some other link, right? So I think we already saw it in last lecture, right? How to specify href and source, right? So these are some resources which it is trying to load, okay, some other resources. So internet is basically a bunch of resources, right? And including HTML files, CSS files, JavaScript files, images, videos, scripts, whatever you say, right? And it is hosted on different servers. So for example, Kaggle.com would be hosted on some server, which would be having this HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files, right? Obviously, Kaggle uses something from this Google Tag Manager also, and from different other sources. So it could use jsdeliver.com, right? Different other sources to get data, right? So all of this comprises the internet, and on that internet there are many servers which are holding all of this stuff, right? So ultimately what you're doing when you're clicking, when you're doing kaggle.com, typing it here, what you're essentially doing is requesting these resources from the internet, right? And you are making some request, right? So we will understand what kind of requests you make. But when you make a request, a response is generated based on the request you make. Okay. So maybe if you do something like this, you see that there is slash competitions, right? So you are requesting a different path, and accordingly you are getting this response, right? So this is what I mean, this is how it happens. You make a request to a resource and then you are sent a response back by the server. Okay. So now more about it, that there is a protocol of requests and responses. There is some protocols which allow you to finally view this page in browser, right? And the browser, since you get this, browser knows how to render it, so it renders it back into this form, right? So I mean, obviously there are a lot of things if we go into networking, but we would learn one of the fundamental parts of how internet functions, right? And okay, and that is called HTTP, right? So let's start the session. Before even going into HTTP, we might have heard of the term TCP or IP. So it basically stands for Transmission Control Protocol, right? Or Internet Protocol. Right? So I mean, these are basically some standardized rules, right, that allow computers to communicate. Some I mean, there are some rules which are written when this particular protocol is coded, right? So that allow you to communicate on a network such as internet. So over internet you could exchange information, right? So how that happens is that there is a layer called TCP, right, IP, and that allows you to communicate. Basically, these are some addresses. So what happens when you are actually doing Kaggle.com or Kaggle.com/competitions or TCP? You know, this type of connection is formed between your browser, where you are, and this site, right? This site server, okay, and it creates a channel where you can send requests and the response will be sent back through that channel. So first of all, whenever you are doing this, a TCP connection is created, right? And then after that you could make HTTP requests, right? So this is called hypertext transfer protocol and is used to structure requests and responses over the internet when data transfer is required, right? So whenever you need to fetch data from some other server to your client, right, this machine, or you need to do something else, send data, let's say upload an image, right? So all of those kind of things is done over HTTP, right? And it's called hypertext transfer protocol. So we've already seen HTML, right? Hypertext markup language, right? So something like that we can pick something from there that it transfers hypertext, basically HTML kind of stuff, right? Text stuff or images, images itself are text if you convert them into base 64. So anyway, so it does all of those things and is used to structure requests and responses over, right? So we got that. uh, so what happens is that the TCP manages the channel, right? And uh, it is used to manage many channels, right? So for example, you're sending multiple requests, and HTTP is the command language that both of the devices understand. Basically, your browser also understands, and that server also understands. So that is why this protocol is used to transfer data, right? So more about this, uh, right? So let's understand that what are the components of HTTP, right? Why again if this is necessary is because all the things are happening over HTTP in your browser, right? Here it is HTTPS. So there is one more thing called HTTPS. It's just HTTP secure. So basically, you're using the same protocol, but whatever transfer of data that you're doing is encrypted, right? It is secured using something right here. If you see, it will show that it is secure. It is using some security certificate. So anyway, so there are these two kind of things. HTTP, right? S is just the secure version. So you will be doing everything over the internet using HTTP. All the requests that you make are using HTTP. And there are different type of requests. So let's understand those requests, because all of those kind of requests we can use to do scraping, right? We may need to do that. Okay? So first of all, let us understand HTTP requests and the concept of headers, right? So, uh, so basically, what happens is that when you are again typing, when you're typing some link, let's say google.com, okay, you're typing this, right? So what happens when you click enter here? Uh, some information is sent by your browser to the server, okay, and allows that information allows the user, not user but the server, to understand what resource is being asked for, okay. So there is something called
क्या रहा?
sorry Ankit, I just mute you, yeah, thank you. Anyway, so I was saying that so we were discussing headers, right? So whenever you do something like this and click enter, what happens is that google.com it searches for the DNS, right, domain name server, and then that domain name server searches for the IP of google.com, and finally on that IP your resources are located. So those are displayed here, right? But when you click again, if you click enter, what happens is that there is something called headers, right? Those headers are kind of information that you send to the server, which allows us to recognize better that what resource you're trying to find, and then accordingly sends it back to you. Okay, so basically, so it's just some information, right? So let's say you want the you want image back from the server, or you're requesting some image, right? So your email headers will have something that says that I want an image, right? Or you're asking for a video, or you're asking for a normal content like web page, right? So all of that will have some information that allows the server to know what exactly are you trying to look for, right? So it's basically a lookup kind of thing. And then it can be of different type, right? Headers may maybe you can ask that I want I want an image, I want a text, I want a video, I want bnd, I want application, right? Sometimes you download application. So all of those things you specify using some keywords that we will see. And then headers is one thing, and then there are some request types. Okay, so when you're doing the request, right, you're sending some information, plus you're also sending some information about the type of thing you want to do. Okay, so we might have heard that there are four kind of things that we do in any kind of application, right? Either we are fetching data from it, right? We want to see some data, which is called view, right? Either you want to view something, or post. So post means that you want to create something new. Okay. So in any application, either you are viewing something, or you want to create something new, right? So when you want to create something new, that is called post, right? Or what you want to do, what you've already created, you want to update it, right? So maybe there was something wrong and you want to update it. So put means update, right? And then finally there is delete. So in any application, you might want to fetch, you might want to create, you might want to update, or you might want to delete, right? CRUD operations. If you've heard of CRUD operations, CRUD, create, read, update, delete, right? So all of those things, you can specify that what you exactly want to do at the server, right? So those are these things, right? So uh, get is used to request data from a specified source. It is one of the most common HTTP methods, right? Because mostly whenever you are, doing google.com, you're just requesting content, right? Here also when you're doing something, right, you are again requesting some content, right? So all of these are get requests. Okay. So that is the most common type of request. We will understand why these are called get requests anyway. Sorry. So post, then there is something called post, right? Post is generally one of the most common methods, right? Get and post, these are the most common ones, because either you want to read some data or you want to create some data, right? You want to upload an image and you want to see that image, right? There are chances that you want to update it and delete it, but mostly these are the most common types. So again, what there are some features of this, that they are never cached, right? Caching is again another concept that um, just you are creating a recognizer, maybe so understand like that. Okay, and then post requests do not remain in browser's history. So whatever data you are sending over a post request, first they are never cached. Second, they don't remain in browser history, right? So whenever you want to do something secure, obviously when you want to create a content, create something, obviously you would want it to be over secure network, right? So you use a post request, right? Third thing is that they don't have any restriction on the length of data that you want to transfer, right? So let's say you wanted to transfer 1 GB of file, right? You upload 1 GB of file, you could certainly do that. maybe you could not, retrieve it and see it on a screen, but you will be able to download it, right? So, those kind of things you can do, right, using post request. Generally, post is used when you are filling forms and submitting forms, right? Whenever you are submitting forms, that is called a post request generally. Obviously, it could be a get request, as we see here. When I am doing something, that is called a get request. So what is the difference? We will just see. But these are the type of requests, right? And then there is something called content type. Right, we already discussed, what a content type is. So I mean, not discussed, but we heard that when we want to, let's say I say content type is image. So I'm sending a header called content type, and then there is the server knows, that I have to send the resource as, content type image. Okay. So there are many content types. We already discussed audio, text, multi-part, form, data, examples like that. So you just need to know there is something like this. What it allows is, again, that thing, right? Communicate with the server. Third thing is then after this is, the response, right? So whenever you will be sending a request, right, there will be a response from the server, right? That response might not be exactly what you expect, but obviously whenever you will send a request, there will always be a response. Not what you expect, but there will always be. So obviously, some when there are headers, request headers, there will be response headers, right? So response headers means those information which again allows you to understand, right, what is being sent back from the server. So these are again similar kind of information. There is also content type, right? So let's say you are being sent a file back from the server, right? An Excel file. So the content type may be, Excel, uh, multi-part. Sorry, I don't know. It must be if you're asking for a CSV file, right? So it will be text slash CSV, right? If you're asking for an XML file, it will be text slash XML. But if you're asking for something like um, Excel, uh, Excel, I don't know what it would be. It might be something like application slash uh, Excel, MS Excel, something like that. So, but there will be a content type, right? So, all you need to understand is that you must be able to understand what content type is being, sent back from the server. Okay. So, again, and we will just inspect it. So along with the response that is being sent back by the server, we also get a response status. So along with the headers, obviously from headers we get some information of the type of response that is being sent back from the server into the browser, and a response status code is also sent such that it is better clear, right? That you know what is the exact status of the server, that server sent, right? So there are a few response types, right? So I've written here 200, 404, and 500. I think 404, most of you would have heard 404 not found, right? So whenever a resource is not found, right, 404 error is thrown by the browser, right? And similarly, there are statuses called 500, which says that, there is something wrong with the server. So we would have, seen internal server error on some pages. So those are something called 500 server error, something like that. And there is something called 200. So whenever we get, the status code as 200, we can expect that the right response has been sent back by the server. It might not be your expected response, but correct response. What you requested, the response was sent back according to the, you know, whatever form or payload that you had sent, right? So this will be better play when we will see it live. Then the last thing is the developer console, right? So developer console is basically a tool that allows you to inspect network requests that are happening between your browser and the server, right? And if you could somehow get hang of all the network requests that is going from your browser to the server, then you could replicate those requests and get the response, parse it, and then do whatever you could want, right? So let's proceed further. Obviously, today we will discuss and do one of the, we will for sure today do this because this we have not done it till yet, and this will allow you to use modules like requests, right, and beautiful soup because these are important. Obviously, later on we will do some power sources from where we can get, uh, power data. But for now, this is a simple example as well. It might be useful for you if you want to create an app based on this. So we will do this today. But before that, we will have to explore the developer console. So kindly follow with me. So how you can open developer console is by if you are in Chrome, right? So developer console is feature now available in all of the major browsers, right? So if I open, let's say Internet Explorer, right? And even if someone was using this, right? So if I go here, so let me show one by one. Let's say if you are using Internet browser, Internet Explorer. I don't know. Okay, ask me later. So if you were using this here, if you come here tools and then click it, right here, you could see F12 developer of tools, right? So this developer tools is actually what we are calling developer console, right? Developer tools is named developer console in Google Chrome. So what it does is basically it opens something like this: DOM Explorer, console, debugger, all of those things, and network tab, performance tab. Now, I hope if you're using Internet Explorer, you could open this. If any doubts, please let me know. If you're in Google Chrome, you go here and you go to more tools, and then you go to developer tools. Okay, developer tools, right? This will open again similar kind of thing that is available here in this thing, right? This was called developer tools. Here also it is called developer tools, I guess. More tools, developer tools, right? So but it was called developer console earlier. Anyway, what you could do is also always also press F12 on your machines, right? So F12 will open it or close it back, right? So I'm pressing F12, it opens and it closes. Similarly in Mozilla Firefox, I don't have Mozilla, maybe I have, no I don't. Okay, so if you had Mozilla Firefox, again, here you could do something like more tools and then developer tools, or you could press F12 to open a similar kind of screen. So let me open Kaggle homepage. Right, this is I don't know if you know about it. It is a data science competition. Used to be data science competition website. Now it is so much more. But anyway, so what we want to do is we want to open developer console, right? So let us discuss what this developer console is, right? Here we are seeing in Chrome that it is called Elements, but a better name for this is DOM Explorer, right? So just yeah. So the better name is DOM Explorer. Basically, what happens is that we have already discussed what a DOM is, right? So the DOM is basically this tree, right, which is created by the browser, right? So it is basically the DOM Explorer, right? You obviously you have a source here, you have a page source, right? You already seen, but this also looks like a tree, right? This also looks like a tree, but this is exactly what you're showing, what is being shown right now based on user interaction. So I will just mute Ramesh sir. Okay, sorry. So anyway, what I'm saying is that this tree is DOM, right? This all of this thing that is available here, and here it is called elements. In Internet Explorer it is called DOM Explorer, right? So here you can find the DOM. Okay, all the code that is currently loaded, what you see here is available here, right? Anyway, the next thing is console. I think in last when we were exploring JavaScript, we saw something operations here, right? So on this page, you can run JavaScript specifically for this page. So let's say I wanted to click it, right? This particular thing. All I could do was copy selector. I think I showed you some bits of all these things, right? And I could say get query selector, just get or get query selector itself, right? Query selector, and then I could just say this, and then I could maybe click it, right? Click it, okay. So if I click it, right, uh, this would be clicked, and that Joshu RC would be loaded here. So what I could do was I could do some interaction, right? So whatever JavaScript that you could apply on this page, right, you could write here, right? And why you would need to do something like that? To test, right? Maybe you wanted to do some automation here, right, in your own. So let's say I have a chat application where I want to automatically type something. You could write something like this there, and automatically that thing will happen. Okay. So anyway, let's discuss this further. We will understand more. Third thing is sources. So what sources tab has is basically all of the resources that are loaded as a part of this web page. So you could see that this Kaggle site is loading data from so many sources, so many different servers. So there is something called Google Analytics, right? All of these things obviously could be uh, uh, I mean, it could be on same server, but let's assume it on different servers. So all of these are on different servers. Why we are assuming different servers? Because generally, obviously Google is a big system, so everything was maybe on one server, but generally a site may request sources from different servers, right? So what we are just seeing right here is that, you know, uh, there is something called top, and then there are sites. So from Kaggle it is loading from a static folder, all of these things, right? From font from let's say rsms.me, it is getting inter and inter.css, right? All of these files. So it's basically just showing a tree of whatever files are being loaded to render this page, right? So we need so many files, right? So many folders, so many files, a JavaScript file, so many things. So anyway, you can see that here so much JavaScript is written. All of that, together, you creates the functionality of this web page, as we discussed, right? So from sources, we can just have a look at what all is loaded as a part of this website. Then there is something called network, right? This is the tab we will be using mostly. Let me just place it here. Okay, I'll just place it like this. You could do it below or side. Here you have three options. You could dock it in a separate window, right? Or you could just let me admit all the people once. Yeah, so I hope everyone is in. So you could dock it bottom, right? You could dock it sideways. So I'll just dock it sideways because here you could see what is happening, and here you would see the request, right? So network, what happens is that this tab, so for now I will just keep it down, but while I will be making network request, I'll place it back there, right? I will just discuss what rest of the tabs are, right? There is network tab. This is the tab that is the core of all web scraping, right? This tab and this tab as well, right? This could give you some idea. I think the first four tabs, all of them you will use, because here you will check what all elements are there. Here you might be wanting to automate some JavaScript. Here you will see what all files are loaded as part of this web page, and here you will see what exactly are the network requests that are being made. Whenever I click this, right, some network requests will be made. So what all network requests are being made as a part of this page. So let me just clear it. The next thing is performance, right? So if I do something, this page, what it does is uh, it does something which we don't need to understand, right? But let's proceed. Basically, it checks how much time it takes to load this page and does some profiling, right? So we don't need to understand that. Here we can see, but it is again used by testers and application developers to understand how well their site is performing, how much time it is taking to load, right? So then there is something called memory. Again, we don't need to use this, but it would be showing something like this. There is something, a JavaScript VM instance inside it, which is handling all the JavaScript, and it currently has 30.7 MB space, right? So your browser currently has, this site has 30.7 MB space. Then there is application, right? Application has some of the other things, right? Local storage, session storage. This is also used by application developers. So let's say they are storing something in cookies, right? They're storing something in local storage, browser storage, or session storage, right? All of these places they can store something, so they could, understand and see what all they are doing, if you're doing correct, right? Anyway, then there is security, right? So anyway, what we will be using, again, if you add more extensions, there might be more tabs, right? But prominently, these are the 4 tabs. Here also, you could see DOM Explorer, console, and then there is network, right? Network has, again, similar kind of things. If I uh, just do it like this, network has, all of those things which are being, which is happening, right? Protocol, method, we already discussed, right? Name, resource. So anyway, let's try it live and see how to inspect network, because as we discussed, the first step to even scrape the static data source, you will have to inspect the website and check if the required data is available in page source, then make the network request. So to make the network request, you will have to inspect the network request, because you have to evaluate the network request the same way your browser is doing, because you have to basically act like a browser, right? So anyway, let's try something like Google itself, right? So let me come here, Google, and let me open the network tab, right? Developer tools, and then I would just do it like this, dock it sideways, and go to the tab called network, right? Because I want to check all the networks. Here we can see that I have something called filter, and then I have all XHR, JS, CSS, image, all of those things. So what these are basically, you by default, if you have all selected here, what it means is that it would show all kind of requests that are happening. So here you can see that the type is document, JavaScript, PNG, etc. The status is something here, right? Size is something here, and then there is more stuff. So if you select XHR, what will happen is only the requests, right? XHR is a kind of Ajax request, right? You don't see it happening, but it happens on the background, right? So XHR or Ajax request was sent to this particular link, right? If I just open it in a new tab, right, it will say that obviously an uninformed or illegal request, that you are not allowed to do it. You can see that the status is 400, right? Something like that. But at the background, this website did this, right? If I see JS, so only the JS, right? The script files will be shown to me, right? So all of these are some JavaScript files which were requested by the server, right? So if I just open a new tab, this file was requested to, display this web page, right? So if I see CSS, right, there is no CSS which was loaded as part of this web page, right? Obviously, there might be some CSS, but it might be inline CSS, or I don't know how it is doing it, but there is no CSS loaded as a part of this, right? Image, there are images loaded as part of this. One of it is this one, you can see, right? And there are more. There is media. Media as such, there is no video or all of those things, right? So it is not here. Font, obviously there is some font loaded, right? From G's, right? This is the font which was loaded. Here, if I try to open it, it just downloaded, right? Because it was directly embedded into this page. Doc, right? There is some doc. If I open it in new tab, uh, right, I would get nothing because I was not allowed to see this. But this page was able to make this request, and the status is 200, so it got a response as well. But if I go to WS, right, so these are all kind of things which we request, right? And when we click all, we will be able to see all of them. So what happens if I click any of it, right? So let's say if I do something like this, it will clear it. Why would I need to clear it? So we started from scratch. If I wanted to again inspect google.com what all is happening, I would just click it and make enter. So you could see that the first request that was sent from the server was to google.com. Okay, so if I just do something like this and click this, I could see that uh, then I can click on any of it and I would see that I have a few tabs here: headers, preview, response, initiator, timing, and cookies, blah blah. So all of those basically are the information, is the information of this particular request. So you can see that to load a very simple page like this, Google made these many requests, right? And these many requests, all of them sent some particular response back, and then all of those responses were built together by the browser and displayed in this manner, right? So this particular page required all of these sources to load rightly. So anyway, first of the thing is loaded was it requested its own server, right? Google.com. I mean, we are the client, right? We are the browser. We requested google.com, so the request was sent to google.com, right? So here it says all of those information, headers. When I say general, general means basically the general request headers. This will show you the response headers and the request headers. So we already saw that what a request header and response header is. The information that is sent to recognize the some specific information. So let's see what those information is. First of all, the general is request URL. Obviously, this is second thing you can say is here it is written request method, right? So we are using something called get. We just want to fetch the source and display it. We don't want to do anything else. So we did get method, and then something called 200 is written here, status code, and it says green, right? So it was a correct resource. You could get it successfully, right? That is why it is displayed here. Then some other bunch of stuff which we don't need to understand. Remote address, right? This is the remote address of Google. So if I don't know, just try to copy it and get it here, right? Uh, Obviously, this would not work, but Google, this was the IP address of Google. If I just click it, I would be redirected to Google. So, you could also see what the IP address of the remote machine from where this resource was getting, collected. Where did it lie? Let's say I want to see something else. Uh, uh, Client this one. Here I could see 204, but here, a different IP is there, right? Here a different IP is there, right? Here a different IP is there. Okay, so this confirms the theory that it on internet all of these resources are available on different servers, right? And then they are pulled together and need to form a web page, right? So here we can see the response headers, basically the information which was sent along with this web page, right? So we have a page source, right? So this was the page source which was result from the server. This is the response, but along with that response, some headers were sent, which would allow us to recognize, right, what all things are there. So we can see that the content length is something. So this content length might be, I don't know, 6,000, whatever that is written. Okay, so if I would just want to confirm uh, character length, length, okay, character count. So if I just paste it here, right, copy it and paste it, count characters, it would say that okay, it is different. 428818, and here it is 62890. Okay, so mm, maybe it includes the these one as well, these ones. So anyway, we will verify this on some other website, because this is Google. We are not able to verify very well, because there is something, some stuff are hidden in here, right? This is very secure site. So anyway, but this information is used to, here we have some cookie. So this cookie is stored on your computer, and next time this cookie itself, if you know what a cookie is, it allows you to store some information, and then that information then can be used later to do something else, right? So there are so many cookies that are being set right here, which just set how when this your login will be expired here, right? That just that information. Then there is status, right? Status code from the response headers. Okay. Frame options is same origin. I mean, there is no framing here. And then there are request headers. So this is the information that was sent to the server to identify the kind of request we were making. So here we have method, right? We were making a get request. We just wanted to get this page, and then accept, right? It could accept a lot of things. You could upload an image here. You could upload XML here. You could upload HTML. Any kind of things you could, you know, uh, send with the with your request to google.com. Okay, and then cookie, right? Cookie, this would be stored on a computer. This would just say that this request to google.com is being made from my particular system, right? So this cookie signifies that. And then there are some other bunch of requests, something called user agent, which says that the request which is coming from is one of these Mozilla or Chrome or Apple WebKit or Safari, right? So, and then, client X data. Now let's see what happens. Let me just remove this clear it. If I want to see any other thing, let's say API.js, it would have very similar kind of structure. There would be some response headers. There would be some general stuff which would just show you the request method and request URL and remote address, and then there would be response headers which would tell you the kind of response that you would get. So here we can see that. Content type is application JavaScript, right? So this is a JavaScript file, right? API.js. So it says content type JavaScript, okay? And other things, referrer, right? And user agent. If I see PNG, I could see that the content type was image PNG, right? Here it was JavaScript, here it is image PNG, right? So you could, understand that, all of these things, what they signify, right? Response headers will have information about the response. Request header will have information about the kind of thing that you would like to get. Okay, the information about the requests. Okay, so I hope this is clear to everyone. Let me just clear this out and record from scratch. Let's say I want. So as soon as I click this, you saw that as soon as I clicked, it made a request. So even on a click of a button on this input where we would write something, you know, this sends some requests. Let's inspect what are those, right? One of the requests is sent is to some server which we do not understand what it is, right? And it basically does nothing. In request, we are doing nothing, right? In fact, in query string, we send something, right? Again, this makes no sense to us, right? But again, this type of request was sent. Again, something else, search box, right? Something else, data image, something else. Okay, something was done just on a click. Now, if I just type something and say, let's say I type YouTube. Okay, I type YouTube here, right? See, as soon as I click, again, those two requests were sent again, right? But anyway, again, as soon as I click, as many times I click, those requests are sent. So if I type YouTube here, right, you could see that as I typed, so many requests kept sending, right? So on each of them, you could see that the request was this, and there were some query strings, right? So there is one more thing which we have not discussed, right? After request headers, if you're also sending some data based on which you will get the response, those are called query string parameters, or post parameters, whatever, right? So here you can see that in query, right, this particular is URL, and then there is this query, right, q is equal to u, right? This is already being fetched, right, so that your search can be optimized, right? This is Google's feature. As soon as you do YouTube, right, you could see that already YouTube was also searched, YouTube is also searched, right? So it is just Google's way of doing things, right? So every time you type a word, right, Google is sending one more request to, to help you be ready. YouTube songs, let's say I say songs. So you can see even on each key type, Google is sending a request such that your things are, it's just Google's way of doing things such that things are fast. As soon as I click enter, you see that, things changed, and from scratch, something happened. So I can see that some request was made on slash search, right? And then something, okay. And request method was again get, and there were some response headers, okay. And then there was some request headers, right? And there was lastly the data that you had sent. Okay. So in that query string parameters, right? Uh, there is Q, which says YouTube songs. Okay, so this is the query that you gave, right? And this is some more information that is hidden, but is anyway passed by Google, right? To the server to fetch this particular page. Now we can see that when I clicked enter, all of these things also came. So if I click this and preview it, I see that this image was there, and then this image was there, right? I can see all of those things here, right? This image was also here, right? So all of those things, together, even my image is here because it is available, I think here, right? So even that is loaded, okay. Then other things, so many stuff. So basically now you could understand that these were all the requests that were sent, right? Even R is loaded. I don't know where it is exactly, but it might be somewhere, right? So it is loaded as part of this things. So now you could understand. uh, so ultimately this tab will show you the response headers, request headers, some general request information, and ultimately the parameters that you are sending as part of the request. Okay. The next tab is preview tab. So what it does is simply previews the resource that you have requested. So if I click this, it says that this resource you requested using this URL where all of these things you sent, but it looks like this. So anything that click, if you click it here, you see which says something. You are not ready to do. If you click here, um, what would have simply happened again, it is because of Google, you would see this on some other site. This particular thing that you are seeing here would just come here, okay? So if I just click here anywhere else, right, you could just see that whatever things that are, available on the page are loaded here, right? Okay, so preview would just show it in the form which is available on the web page, right? Let us maybe see something else. Let us see, all of these are images, right? Because these are loaded as part of all of these things. But let me see something else. Mm, let's say this one. Okay, so this is again, uh, if I see headers, right, I can see that the content type is JavaScript, right? So this is a JavaScript, and if I see in preview, it would exactly show me what it is, right? So this is what it looks like, right? So we can just see in preview tab what exactly it is. And then there is something called response, right? So response is what was sent back by the server. So if I click on some image, let's say here, right, this request has no response data, right? If I click on some other image, this one, this request has no response data. If I click here, right, this has some response data. So it shows that, you know, this response was sent back. The preview is this, right? Preview and response are obviously same here right now. But, you know, preview and response could be different in something else. Let's leave Google now and go on some other site to understand this better. Um, I think we can go on. Um, I don't know, some simpler site which would let's try one which we were doing very recently. This one. So what happens is that you could put a GST number and then you would get the answer, right? So let me just go here. You could see that the first time this, you know, site I requested, I clicked this bunch of requests were sent. So the first request was on search text here, right? This particular thing, right? So after the you know, site URL, you will get the exact resource which is being requested. So here I can see that search text there was requested. Here I can see the preview is exactly like this. On Google it was not, you know, shown. Response again is the HTML. So preview is exactly the preview of response that you are getting. Okay, right? And headers again, you can see that we have some response headers, right? The content type is text HTML because this is an HTML page that was returned, right? And then there are something called request headers which has nothing, right? And there are no string query parameters because we have not put anything here. So let us try put something. Let us copy this, right? So now I will be sending a request here. Let me just clear this out. Let's say I wanted to scrape this site and see what exactly is the link where I need to make requests to get the response data. So I will just, you know, paste it here. I will just click this. As soon as I click this, I see that there is some link which is requested. If I click it, I see that the request URL is some Ajax, right? And that gives me this. So the request is a post request. Now I am filling some form, and, you know, want to uh, uh, you know, maybe again post method is generally for creating, but whenever, as we saw that whenever you don't want to send the data, right, um, send the data in the URL, right? So you know, in Google, let's say I again go to Google and I, you know, type songs, right? Songs. So you would see that this particular query was sent into the link, and then any user or anyone else could see that what exactly that you are trying to search. But in post request, what happens is that the data is not, you know, sent in the URL, so it is kind of, you know, safe, right? Safe from a normal user. Obviously, someone could come here and say it, right? Uh, but just one level of, you know, abstraction maybe. So anyway, here you search for something and you send some requests and got some response. So the response that you got was response was actually a, you know, JSON file, right? Some JSON data. So here exactly what it is, you know, telling me that the content type in response was JSON, right? So we saw that there was no more request, you know, nothing else was sent when I clicked this button. Only one request was sent, and that request too, you know, gave me very simply the JSON data, which was then displayed here, right? So if someone is knows some web development, they would understand what this means, right? You got the JSON data, and then it was just, you know, shown in the placeholders. If you see preview, right, obviously that would be that would just show it in a better form, right? Response कहीं preview response ही better form में वो show करता है preview वाला. Somewhere you would find that there is no response but there would be a preview. It is because that response cannot be shown here. I mean, it is not renderable here, right? Preview might be renderable, so it would show you. So ultimately, you saw that uh, uh, the response that you got was exactly this, and then this response could be used here, right? And then your web page could be created. If you were to scrape it, right, you could see that all you had to do was open in new tab, and it would ask you to log in, because you would not be able to do you would not be able to call that API without login. But again, you don't need to do that, because that all you need to do is click enter here, right? And then this particular site, it will be sent the request, and it would have this response which you can parse and do whatever you want, right? So this is a very simple example. Let us see make my trip, right? Make my trip would be better example. So as soon as I search on Google, so many things popped up. If I click here, right, so I see that make my trip some request was sent, and you see that when make my trip is loaded, it also loads so bunch of resources from so many different servers, right? Some are style sheets, some are scripts, right? So this particular site, all it requires is all of those things. Okay? What happened, right? Anyway. Now again, if I wanted to inspect, I could just see that for by default the response was this. The preview looked like this exactly. Header was it was a get request, because I don't just need it to resource. If I wanted to check this, right? Again, this is HTTP, so if I went to it, it would not allow me, right? But if I do HTTPS, something like this. Again, it did not provide me because it is secure, right? They have this security. But again, if you were a real hacker, I mean, great hacker, right? This would be enough for you to find if something is missing in their security things. But anyway, so this is just the IP address. And then there are rest of stuff which set something, and then something else. So I'll just remove all of this and start from scratch to see what all network requests are there. So let's say I wanted to scrape this site. What I wanted to do was inspect network to understand that how exactly this site, my browser is sending requests to the server such that it is getting data. Okay. So I already have some form pre-filled. Right. Let me change this to so as soon as I clicked it, you see that even to display this particular, thing, right, the date picker, it had to do something, right? If I see preview, right, it loaded a bunch of resources for me to, show, right? It loaded all of those things. Preview. Anyway, so now let me click something like 24 here, right? As soon as I'll click 24, nothing happens because no request need to be sent for a JavaScript thing, right? And then when I would click enter, let me just clear it. If I click search, right? So why I need to when I click search, why I need to see is because exactly when I will click search, right, I will get data. So I will just want to see what exactly happens here. So I'll click search, and then I see that it is just a simple website web page, right? It's called search.itinerary, right? Flight search itinerary something something. So I see response, right? I see that this thing, and headers I see the funda is very similar, right? I see that what happened. So something changed, right? In between, more requests were made, and then that thing changed. But if I just request it again, I would just be able to see that my my request had a few parameters, right? There was something called itinerary, right? There was something called trip type. There was something called passenger type, There was something called if it is international or not. It says false, and then there was cabin clause called economy or business class, whatever. So these five parameters were sent to the server as string parameters, request parameters, and then this response, which was of type HTML, was sent back, right? Responses was of type HTML is sent back, right? And then it is being rendered like this. Okay. So I hope now these things are clear. If I wanted to again just verify a few things, pixel details.html, right? If I go to this tab, right, pixel details, nothing opens, right? But it says it's you can see that Everest JS.net. If I see page source, you would see that there is again something here. Okay. Anyway, so all of these resources are loaded as part of the page. Let's see something else. We found that ICO status code 301. So basically, there are some issues with this, right? And it also shows some orangey, right? So there are some issues. Conversion.js, right? So all of those things are loaded. I cannot see any images right now, but yeah, there are images as well. So all of those things are also there. Okay, so you get the idea now. And I think now you will be able to also see. So for example, anything you do, if a server request is needed, it would do a server request. Let me just clear it again, and let me click it here. If I click it here, right, some server request was needed, right? So a server request was done, and ultimately we could see that uh, flight where it is. So, hmm, I mean, basically there was no form here, right? But even to recognize that you're clicking this page and asking for something, it sends some these things like Delhi, Bangalore, and page name, something like that for it to understand and then load this thing. Right, so I hope this all makes sense. Uh, I think we should now start with our first website, uh, which uses simple things. I hope this could give you the right start into web scraping, and whatever we have learned till now, we will use all of it, and then uh, you know code it. So I hope everything is clear till now. So we will be starting with coding now. If anyone has any doubts, we can take them or we can proceed. Right? Just let me know. Seems like no doubts. So I'll just I'll just take 2 minutes pause because you just come. Okay. So there is just 2 minutes pause. I'm just coming in a minute. Yeah, so hello everyone, we can start now again. Uh, so let us open it and let's close other things. Okay, and we will be using this one collab, Google Collab, because we don't need to then use uh, Sublime Text. And even if you don't have installed Python installed, those packages installed, I think we will be good to go. Okay, but even if those packages are already installed, I think those who want to do it on their own machines, right? I would just give a brief, okay? Just 5 minutes brief, and then let's go to scraping, right? So what we will be doing is we've already discussed modules in Python. So what they do is basically it's a code library that extends functionality, okay? So it could be written by anyone, right? So if I go to PyPy, right? PyPy is called the Python package index. Here you can see that find, install, and publish Python packages with Python package index. Right? It's a repository of software for Python programming language. So what happens is that here you can see there are some projects, new releases. All of these are Python modules which you can use to extend functionality. So let's say I find requests here. Right? I can see that I have something called Python HTTP for humans. If I click it, I see that there is okay, something written here. So it's just basic introduction to what the module is like. You can see that I don't know, it is not loaded correctly. Let me just reload it. I don't know why it shows like this. There is some problem with the site itself, but we can see that there is some Python code here. Okay, right? Python, and then there is something. So it is a Python module, right? You could do import request and then something. So if I click it here, request.readthedocs.io, it would redirect me to the documentation page for this module. So right. So whenever we want to scrape a static data source or even a dynamic data source, in fact form generated data source, right? We will be able to do it using requests, right? So request is an elegant and simple HTTP library for Python. What it does is allows you to send HTTP requests easily. Uh, there is no need to manually add query strings to your URLs, right? Or to form and code your post data. Atul, there is bar coming in screen. Okay, sir, I'll just remove this maybe here. Right? So all I'm trying to say is that request is a module, right, which allows you to do all of these web stuff, right? Send request to server, send query strings, send post data, right? Some data that you want to send on server based on which something happens. It keeps the connection alive, and HTTP pooling are 100% automatic, right? So there is something called pooling we don't need to understand, but it basically keeps your connection stable and connected to the server, right? Until a new request is made. So there is a concept of sessions here, right? So sessions are also managed. So let's say you wanted to log in into some site, right? And then obviously when you log into the site, after that a session starts, and in that session you are recognized by the website or the browser, right? So request is able to do that as well, and allows you to do all of those things, right? So anyway, these things are there, but no need to get into that. Right after it says some quick start passing arguments in URL, right? Make a request. So it starts by giving me some examples, right? Request.get, request.post, data, key value, all of those things. Okay, so let me just go it here once. Events, this is something. So anyway, it allows you to do all of those things, right? And then the second module is um, again not written here, but that is called beautiful soup, right? So if I just searched beautiful soup PyPy or beautiful soup Python, right? What I would get is this crummy.com, right? It is some site, okay? And then there is one more page on Python packaging, right? So everywhere, you will find here it is, more clear, right? Here also there are some, there are no issues because all of those things are not here. Here also you will find some documentation page, right? So all of the packages that you will search on PyPy, right? PyPy.org, Python package index.org, right? All of those will also have their documentation and homepage links, right? The major ones, right? So also it shows some quick start here how you could use it, and then for more detailed one, this is the documentation, right? Here also it shows you what all you can do. So here you can see that it is basically parsing HTML page, and that is why we were learning it, right? How to parse HTML page, because once we know what is the structure and the kind of things we can do with it, then it is easy for us to search stuff and do some things. Okay. So we will separately take requests in beautiful soup, because the parsing itself, all of those things we will do, and then only we will be able to get a hang of it. But in today's example, we will do very simple stuff with it, and I think we will be able to understand what it does. So these two things only we will be using, and this allow you to maybe do 50% of sites which are available on the web, right? Form based sites and normal get sites. So let's try it. Let me just do session 8, right? And coronavirus data scraper, right? So what I was telling everyone was that if someone doesn't want to use this, they could use their own thing, right? And what you could do in the console, right? What you would do pip install, right? The packaging. So let's say requests. Pip install requests, and it would install requests. Right? How I knew that I had to do this was because on Python package index, this command was written here, right? So I could do this. So I copy it, and you know, nothing is happening. I don't know why. Maybe some issue with the internet, but internet is fine, right? That is why we're connected. So anyway, it says requirements are already satisfied. So I think I have already installed this package, maybe an older one, so maybe it would just update it. I don't know, but mostly it would say that I have already installed it. So what you could do, just pip install requests. So when you do pip, if there is some error, please let me know. It is mostly because of environment variables not configured properly, but we configured this in first session, so I think they should be fine. If pip throws error, please let me know. Okay. So right. Mm, Now again, if I do something like this, this also would be installed. But I have already installed it, so I just cancelled it. Okay, officially cancelled by you. Now let's get into coding. Right? You can, I think you should use collab with me for today, because we are doing a basic example. I think when we are doing advanced example, we will be creating scripts. So, but for now, today, we just want to do a simple example. So we would do something like this. So let me start the session. Before even doing this, let me just write a comment, right? Corona virus data scraper from worldometers, right? Worldometers. In fact, we can give the link to the site. Okay, so this is kind of a documentation thing, right? So if you are building in a team, right, these kind of things could help. And then I think that's it. This should this could be a bit of a text. And we could say something like this, and then just write it like this. Presented here. Delete it. Okay, and then you could say import required modules, right? So first we will import required modules, which will extend the functionality. Right here, we already saw in one of the lectures that it has base packages as well as most of the required packages that we like already installed, right? So it would already have requests and beautiful soup, so we would not need to install it here. So we can just say import, right? Import requests. Right? So we've already installed it. So as it is shown here, you could just import request and we have imported request. Okay? Just like we have seen in other lectures. We could obviously do this as RQ, right? Rec. This is called aliasing, but that's fine. We will not do it. And then we could again alias it. Alias, not alias it, but you know, use you know, what do we say? Bring one particular class that we use. So if you did not want to import the whole module and only import a particular function that we saw in one of those lectures, right? You could say something like this. So the module is called VS4, and from that you could import beautiful super, beautiful super, right? So we have imported these two modules. These two should be fine for us to get the data and parse it, right? One more module. So let's say I wanted to save it in a CSV file. So for that I will have to import the CSV module. Now I can run this, right? So this ran successfully, right? So this ran successfully. Now I can start writing my code, right? So first thing was again. Just inspect the website, check the required data and page source. So I want what data, this data. I would just go to page source and just get one of this data and find it there. Right, Control F. Let me just load it. I'll just control find here, and I could see that the data was available in source, right? So if the data is available in source, I make that network request to server and fetch the response, inspect the response, required tags containing data, pass the response, save it to spreadsheet or database, right? All questions. So data is there, I need to make a request, right? So from request, you can make all kind of requests, the get request, where you just want to fetch a resource, post request, where you want to send some data, right? And then obviously update request, update request, you will also some new data, right? Which you would want to replace with, and then delete, right? Some page you would want to delete. And there are obviously other options called hidden options, but let's not discuss it. You would not need it. Mostly post and get you would need. Hardly you would need to put something. Okay? Because most of the times you would not be having access to other servers where you would be able to update something, right? If you are using, let's say, Facebook, obviously you could update something, right? But some here you could not update anything, so you would not. In fact, you would not be even posting something, right? You would not be. You do not need data based on some other data, right? So it's just direct web page, a static web page. So you know, just do that. Anyway, now I have seen it. Now let me just third thing I will have to do is inspect it. So let's inspect it right away, and I could see that you know this has some. This is placed in some TD, right? And TD is again placed in some row, right? So there is some table row TR, right? We already saw this in HTML, and then there is TD called TD is basically this column, right? So one column, two column, three column, right? Table column you can say, and table row, right? So each of these TD has data in it, and the structure is same throughout, right? So there is one division, main table countries div. If I could somehow search and find this one, I would know that inside this there is a table which ultimately has some table heading, right? And table body. The table body ultimately has a lot of table rows, and each of those table rows has a lot of table columns. right? And all of those table columns have some data. So this gives me a basic idea that how I have to do it. I have to find this div. In that div, I have to find this table. In that table, I have to somehow, if I want to get the headings, right, I will have to get the t head, and then parallelly I will have to get the t body. Inside the t body, I will have to find all the rows. Inside each of those rows, I will have to find all of these columns, and ultimately inside each of those columns, I will have to extract the text. Right. So I have a basic strategy developed in my mind how to arrive at this text. Okay. So what I will do, I would start implementing that strategy. First thing is to make the request and get this data, this particular, what's a page source or DOM, get it in my Python code, right? When it is in my Python code, I could obviously manipulate it, extract stuff out of it, right? So let's do that, right? I've already imported my required modules. So now I will just make a network request, right? Make a network request to the web page, right? So let me name my web page, right? Web page URL, right? So there is a URL, and that URL is this one. So I'll just copy it and just paste it here, right? So this is my URL that I want to save. Okay, and then let me define the web page. Okay, sorry. Web page, what you would do is that you have already imported request. So from request you would use the get method, right? So you can see when I type get, I have this request dot get URL params none, and then some keywords, right? If I click read more here, I can see that it says that it is a request object, right? Ultimately, whatever where the web page will have will contain this request object, and the get method takes a URL and then some parameters, right? And then some keyword arguments if required, right? But we don't need to send any keyword arguments or anything like that. So we will just say web page URL, okay, URL, right? So now this particular line will make the request to this particular link. Right. Now, we also saw in one of the classes that what if I didn't know what now I can do with the web page? I could just simply do dir and web page, right? So it would give me all the options that are available for the web page. So for the web page, it gave me obviously all of those things. These double, underscores I could not use. So, but others I could use. So there is something called status code. So let me just check the status code. So if I check the status code, what I could say was uh, I would have an idea that what happened, right? So I could see that the status code is 200. Basically, when this request was made, you know uh, the response was sent back rightly. Okay, let's say I did coronavirus 1, which did not exist, right? Now it would say that 404 because this does not exist, right? If I want to go at coronavirus 1, just I don't know how to copy this. Okay. Just uh, follow link, okay? Follow link. I can see that not found obviously because coronavirus 1 is not found. Okay, so 404 error is thrown, right? So, but 200 was correct, so 200 was thrown. Okay, so now I know that I can just comment it, or just keep it like this, right? Now I know that my server is sending the response directly back to me. So what I could do is now do something with that, right? So very simply what I could do was now parse it and start finding the things that I need. Okay, so I'll just make a comment and say that um, uh, so let's just see one more thing here. Okay, let's say here dir of web page, right? Again, let's see what all options are available, right? So we have something called dot text and dot URL, right? So .url will just give me the URL on which this request was made, and .text will do what? Let's see, web page .text. Okay, text. Now, what webpage.text will have is basically the response that was sent from the server. Okay, so you can see that the doc type thing, all of those things are here. This is exactly the response that the server has sent, and you could see that if I just do a big one and I don't know, maybe search some of the things. Let's say this one, right? Control C and maybe control F here, right? uh, can't be found because maybe because this is an output. uh, no, can't find, but I think it will be here. If I would just be able to show you something, you can see that 9 new cases, and some of the data, 10 new deaths, all of things are certainly here, right? So anyway, what I simply wanted to tell you was that we have successfully got the response, and webpage.text is the command, or the property, the text property of the webpage class is the one, webpage object is the one that we need, right? So let me just delete this cell for now and delete this one as well. Okay. And do something, right? So what I could do was now parse it, right? So let's say I extract the web page response from the request object, right? So upper one is request object. Now if I want to extract response, I could say response, right? And call it, web page dot text now, right? This is fine. Now I could do was, um, parse this response. Now all you need to do is parse this response. So I will say parse the response, right? And for parsing the response, parsing we have already discussed means is that just this response, it would again need to be parsed to be converted into a tree structure, right? So this response, we say text, right? Ultimately, this currently is a string. It would be need to be converted into a form which can be searched, right? And that is called parsing. So what we would do is we would say something like soup, right? Generally, we call this soup. You could say something, anything like that. Let's say parse response. Okay, let's call it parse response. But generally, in examples that you would see online, you would always be finding it called it soup. So almost everyone in the community calls the first line soup, right? So what we are simply doing is, just passing the response, right? Exact response to the beautiful soup class, right? So we already saw that beautiful soup. Okay. We already saw that we've already imported the beautiful soup class from the beautiful soup BS4 module, right? BS4 is again beautiful soup 4. Okay, BS4, and we are just past response to it. Okay. So we can already see it says that markup. Okay, that markup is actually response, right? That response had that markup. Okay, so response, right? And just one more argument we would say features, right? Features is the argument. So we will just call it LXML, right? Don't need to understand this much, but basically this is the parser, right? There is some parser called LXML, which is used to, convert this text into that tree structure, right? That HTML form, which can then be searched. So now this parse response object, right? They can be searched for, right? So let me just try and see what parse response looks like, right? Or let's say I print it, right? Print parse response dot prettify, right? Prettify. So prettify is one of the functions that is available to this object, right? In the beautiful soup class. So if I just print it, I can see that the response that was sent, right? This exact thing, same thing, right? If I just do page source, I could see that this thing, uh, where is it? From here to, just a second, from here to here, right? This thing here and this thing here is exactly same till the end, okay? Till freestar AW add slot. If you could just see, you would just see that all of that is all right. Freestar add new slot. So all of that response we have now got in my Python object, right? Parse response now contains all of the information from which I need to search that. Okay, simple enough. Now all I need to do is just extract it, and this beautiful soup object allows me some different methods which can be called to find those elements, right? So let's quickly see how to do that. I'll just run this again so that the print one is gone, right? Only simple thing is left, okay? So now I'll just create one more this thing and say that so we've already discussed we wanted to find that table, right? This one where the exact data is available, right? This one. And how we could find it, that yesterday we saw that ID is something which is unique, and luckily we have ID given here, right? So it becomes very easy. In many of the examples, what you would want to find, let's say you wanted to find this DD, you would find there is no ID, right? So again, you will have to use something else. But the most easiest way to find something on a web page is ID, because IDs are unique, right? So we have an ID, right? So if I just search this web page by this ID, right? Because beautiful soup, that parser gives me methods to search this web page using that ID. And if I could get this, all I had to do was get those rows from t head and table body, and then extract those texts and convert it into a form that I want, and then just write it. Right, lot of steps, but very easy steps. So let's take one by one, all of them. First, let's find the table. Find the table into parsed response object. Okay. So what I can do is that, let's say I call it table, right? Table or data table, right? Because it contains data. So I'll call it, and then parsed response, right? Parsed response dot find. Okay. So I'll just say find all, okay, find all, and then I would simply say table, right? So I want to find a table, but I want to find it using an ID. So this is the syntax. You give a dictionary in which the key is ID, and the ID is what you want to search for, right? So the ID here we could find was uh, here we had table ID, this main table countries today. So I just copy it and paste it here, right? So I'll just say find the table with IT main tables countries today, right? So this will be my data table, right? So if I wanted to print it, right, and see what that data table looks like, I could certainly do that. And we saw that obviously there was some table, so we got that table, right? Now it becomes very easy, right? I already have that table. All I need to do is just extract this bits of information that I like. That again can be done based on something similar. So it becomes very easy. Let me just run it again. So I have now parsed data, and this data table object, right? This particular variable holds that list, right? So if I just check that what that data table is object is, right, belongs to which class, I could see that it is a result set, right? So it is something like a set, like so it is a iterable, right? Maybe it is indexable. So let's try and index it, right? So if I say data table, I'm just inspecting it, right? I don't know what could happen on this, but if I say data table 0, right, I could find that data, right? So if I say data table 1, okay, I see that, I get this error. Okay. So there was only one data table with this ID, right? It was a unique one. So in this list, this particular thing is a result set. Result set ultimately it uses some list, right? So it is in form of some list, and it is indexable. So since there are only one object in this, the list kind of result set, so only 0 is available, and on that 0th position, when we saw that that table is available. Okay, so what we could simply do is use this information, right, and do rest of the stuff. Okay, so if I just said the 0th element here itself, right, what would happen is that that data table now will be a tag, right? Data underscore table. Okay, if I saw it. Now I can see that it's not a result set, but it's a tag because I've already indexed it. So what I have now is a tag. Okay, tag element tag, right? We already saw what an element tag is. HTML element tags are those p tag, br tag, heading tags, all of those tags. So it is kind of a tag. Tag here specifically, it is a table tag, right? Here inside we have a table tag, so that is why a tag is returned. Now I want to do something with a tag, right? Something with markup. Tag is kind of a markup, right? Table is kind of a markup, right? As we saw in HTML hypertext markup language. So table is kind of a markup. So we can again find something in that table. So what I could do was data underscore table dot again could have said find all, right? Because now it is a markup, right? We could see that it takes something, right? List of tag objects from given criteria, something like that. So what you could say was you want a t head, right? Here you could see that there is something called t head right inside the table, okay, and there is something called t body, right? This t head and t body do not have anything else to recognize. So if I could somehow extract t head, right? So t head is there is only one. So the 0th element of that result set will have t head, and the 0th element of the result set of t body, which has 3 elements. The 0th element will be t body. That has my data, right? So if I had to implement it, what I would do is that in the t head, right? Since there is only one, it would be 0, right? So we could say t head equal to this one, right? And then this t head again would be kind of a tag because all you already extracted this from the result set. So if I had to check the type of t head, right, this would be a tag again. Okay, now in this tag again I need from t head you want tr, right? So in this tag you could search for tr, right? So again there is only one tr, right? We could see only one tr, so the 0th element will be that, right, from this result set. In t head if you search for tr, you will get a result set, and that result set only has one tr. So again, if you wanted to say something like that, t head trs, okay, so you could say t head, right, dot find all. Again you wanted to find what, all trs, right? And since there was only one, you could set 0, right? So this is, you got all the headings. Let us just write a comment here and say get all the headings. So all the headings was this ones, these are all the headings. Okay, and then you know then you wanted to find all the table rows. So heading has only one row, right? So you got that, right? Now you have to get all the rows. Get all the body rows, right? Body rows. So what you would do is now say T body, okay, table body, and again similar thing from data table, right? From the table, you would find something, right? Find all. You would want to find all T body, right? T body. But since there is only one T body, right? T body. In fact, not one. We have three T bodies, but we want only the first one, right? So when T body will be searched inside the table, three will be returned, but you only want the first one. Okay. So you would want the first one, so you will take zero. Okay. Because if you take one or two here, that would not have the data that you want, so you would get zero. And then what you could say was again T bodies, TRs, right? So there are so many rows. Here you don't have only one, right? You have so many. So you have so many, right? In fact, if you just open it, you would see that there are so many TRs, right? Not one, but a lot of them. Okay, so you have to get all of those TRs, and then in those TRs, you will have to get those TD, right? So in fact, let's do it for our first thing here. Let's call it, um, you could call it, I don't know. Let's create a variable to store it first. Okay. Let's call THS headings. Okay. All the headings. Let's store it in a empty list, and then we will append all of the data that we extract. Right. So until now we only have that tag. Right. And from that tag now we have to get, from that TR we have to get all the TDs, and from that all of the TDs we have to extract the text, and for all of the text we will append it in THS. Okay. So let's see how to do it. What we will do is first TRS TDs. Okay. So from TRS we will find TRS, right? Dot find all again. Find all, and we would say what, TH, right? TH. Why TH is because I guess here in in T head we have TR, inside TR we have TH and not TDs. Okay, so we'll want to find THs here. So TH, and then this TRS TDS will be again a result set which will have all of them, right? So anyway, in fact, let's try to print it and see what TRS TDS is. Okay, so we have a list, right, with all of those things. Okay? So anyway, now now we have all of those things. Now all I need to do is just extract it, country, cases, new, total, all of those things. So we could simply do was, since it is a list or an iterable, I could say for TD in TRSTD, right? TRSTDS. What you could simply do is that now each of these element is a TD, okay, right? According to the iterator, if I do simply dot text, right, what happens is that I get the text inside, okay, this particular thing. So tag, right? All of these, one of these things is a tag. Whenever you do tag dot text, you get the text inside that tag, right? This tag could be anything. So what you could do was THS dot append, right? And say TD dot text, right? So TD is basically the iterator. THS is the list in which you will append it. If I just print the THS now, you would see that I only have the headers, right? Now I was able to extract each of those headings, okay, and keep it in a list. Right, so I hope this one is clear to everyone. If there are any issues, please let me know. So let's quickly do the other one, okay, and uh, we would say something like this itself, right? But we will just find the PD, okay, so T body, T body, and T body, okay, T body, and here you would say T body again, right? TR again, here you don't have one TR, right? So what you would do is that you would not be able to do something like this directly, because then you will have to do each of them TRS 0, 1, right? Because it would not just give one list but a big list, right? So if I wanted to print T body TRS, right, I would see what it is. Okay, it would be basically again an iterable, right? You could see that it's inside kind of a list, right? And it is also separated by comma, right? Here you could see the TR is closed, right? And here TR starts, right? So here, I mean, I could just understand that this is basically an iterable, and then each of those iterables, right? Each of those iterables again has a lot of TDs, which again will have to be iterated over. So what I could do was first extract all the TDs, right? First extract all the TDs, but what I could see was let's see here. What I could see that some of those ones we will not have the data. Okay, correct data. So, but here we could see that almost all of them have. But anyway, let's proceed and see what exactly we're trying to see here. Okay, so until now we have all the body table rows, right? All the body table rows, and we could extract each of them. So we could say that for TRS and T body TRS, right? Uh, So now each of those ones will have uh, you know TDs, right? So I could say TRS dot find all, right? Find all and find TD, right? This I could do, right? And this I could say to TDs, right? So for this particular TRS, we have a lot of TDs, right? And now this will also be a result set like an iterable, right? So TDs will have, let's say, 10 or 12 TDs. So I could iterate over it. I could say for TD in TDS, right? TDS, TDS. Let me define one variable to hold it. I will say um, TD data, right? TD data equal to this. And I will just say TD data dot append, right? And append what? TD dot text. Okay, so for each of the rows, I've extracted all of the table columns and then also extracted all of the data in those table columns. So now if I um, at the end, let me just create one more variable here uh, to hold headings as well as body data. Okay, so I will call it as final list of result. Okay, final list result. Okay, let's say simple like this, and define as an empty set, right? In this empty not set list, in this empty list, the first element will be the THS, right? So we will just call THS here, right? The first element. Okay, or I could say final result, final list result dot append THS, right? This would make sense. So my first row is now THS, all of these things. Now all of the next rows will be the columns, right? So what I could do was say final final list result, okay, dot append and say td data, right? So now if I wanted to print the final result, final result, final list result, okay, list result, this would ultimately uh, some issue here. Let's see what that is. Let's just run it once and then just run it again. Okay. Now I can see that we have a list of lists and that contains all the data. Okay. So, all the data that was there. For South Africa, we have, so at 5th position, we have South Africa, right? 596, all of that thing. So it's there. They have extracted all the data that we wanted. Okay, so I hope this was clear. I think this is all we want to do for now, right? Later, obviously, we could output it. So let's say output file. Let's try it if it happens here. So I could say corona virus data.csv, right? And I could say with open, right? With open output file, okay? File and then uh, give a mode, right? W, right? Write mode, and then say new line, right? So new line, each of those lines will not have any space between them. So by default, Python, when writing CSV, gives space between each of them and say encoding, right? So you would need to specify encoding because there are different type of encodings. So you can obviously read this separately, what all kind of encodings are there, because this is not really related to web scraping, right? But generally it would be UTF-8, the most common one, right? So we are opening something and calling it as SP file, again aliasing it, and then creating a variable or object to hold our CSV writer, right? CSV writer equal to CSV dot writer, right? Writer, and pass it the file that we want to use. Okay, and then just write all the rows. So we will say CSV underscore writer dot write rows, and then just final list result. Okay. Now what would happen is that when this is run, we would see that we have a file created called coronavirus data.csv, and then if we download it and check what it looks like, right? It would be having this data which is available here. So let me just close it, and now I can see that the data which is available on the site is also available here. But I could see that I am getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, some 7 rows of some rubbish data that I don't want maybe. So let me just remove it from the final list that I am trying to get data from. Here I can see that Tiwari TRS. So these are all the rows, right? What I will do is that just you know start from maybe 7, right? Because I want to remove the first 7th one until the last, right? So these 7 rows were not making sense, so I'll just remove it. So if I just remove it now and just run it again, and now I can see that this data now has uh, those it did not remove it. Okay, just let me see what happened. So TRS find all TR, right, and then right, it does make sense, but I don't know why it did not run. Let me just run it here. Let me just run it here again, and then now I guess if I coronavirus data 1.csv, right, it is a different file. Maybe this one will be correct. Okay, so now I can see I removed all those rows, and now I have a much cleaner file to work with. Right, I could even remove this one. So if I wanted, and just do 8 here, right? remove one more row because it is not useful to me, right? So if I just run it and say coronavirus data 2.csv, I would just remove that file as well, right? So coronavirus 2.csv did not get found. I will just run it again and just run this one, and then this one, right? Refresh coronavirus 2, download, and then I could see that even that row is removed now. Okay, so I have a very clean data set, right? So all of that, this web page I could scrape and get it in this form, right? So I think that is it for today's session, right? You could see that how useful this was for you to, scrape and some type of data that you wanted. Okay, so I'll just download the Python file to share with every one of you. And I think that is it for today's session. If there is any doubt, please let me know. Or otherwise, we can conclude with today's session, right? So that is it, everyone, for today's session. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Please let me know if there are any doubts, right? Please let me know over mail. Thank you for today's session. In the next session, what we will do is that we will do some data manipulation using Python, because again, in web scraping, we have seen that here, obviously the data we directly, got by, just extracting the text out of it. What if you wanted to do something on that text, right? We will have to learn data manipulation for that, and that's what we will do in next session. So, bye everyone. I hope today's session was interesting, and this was the first script that we wrote for web scraping, right? So let me know if there is any doubts. Apart from that, bye everyone. I'll just stop.